Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, movie reviews and connections of mine, and welcome back to another installment in my reaction series to each and every episode of the 7th and final season of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, if you've never seen any of my previous reaction episodes before, this is just my short form reaction series where I give my brief synopsis of the episode as soon as I watch it. As well as some thoughts as to what I thought worked, what I thought didn't work, as well as some analysis as to certain things in the episode that may seem familiar to you and where you may have seen them before. Now, this will be a full spoiler review going forward, so just a heads up going into that. If you have not seen the latest episode of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Prior to watching this video, I highly recommend stopping this at this point and coming back later, because this will be full spoilers from here on out. So without further ado, with that in mind, let's get into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 7, Episode 3, entitled Alien Commies from the Future, in which the S.H.I.E.L.D. team aboard Zephyr 1 is transported to the year 1955 at the Groom Lake, aka Area 51, where the early S.H.I.E.L.D. has a brain trust working at the lab there at Area 51, and the Chronicoms are there to try and hijack a ion fusion reactor that didn't work in the original timeline, but if the Chronicoms have their way, they will hijack this device and turn it into a bomb that will annihilate a large chunk of the planet, as well as wipe out the brain trust of S.H.I.E.L.D., thereby fulfilling the Chronicoms mission of killing S.H.I.E.L.D. in its infancy before it can resist their invasion of Earth in the future. So that's why the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are on their coattails. In this timeline, it's revealed in this episode that the S.H.I.E.L.D. team is in fact riding the wake of the Chronicom time ship as it is traveling forward in time from the past, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. team must infiltrate the Groom Lake facility in order to stop the Chronicoms. However, their plan goes awry when Agent Simmons decides to impersonate the legendary Agent Peggy Carter of SSR fame, Captain America's lover fame, and then it turns out that Agent Daniel Sousa of SSR fame and also a recurring character in the Marvel series Agent Carter shows up, and that blows a hole in their plan. So then hijinks ensue as far as that goes. We see both May and Yo-Yo struggle with the realities of their conditions post the events of Season 6, mainly Yo-Yo recovering from being infected by a Shrike, and she's still struggling to use her inhuman powers, and May has a seeming panic attack during a gas event in one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. labs, and we're not entirely certain what that's about, but I'm pretty certain it's a side effect of whatever was done to save May's life after being supposedly killed at the in the Season 6 finale. So all this is happening. The S.H.I.E.L.D. team manages to thwart the Chronicoms this time. However, they're still in 1955, and there may yet be more Chronicoms on Earth at this time frame, and who knows what they will do going forward. Although the preview for the next week's episode seems to imply that they're after Agent Daniel Sousa. So what I thought worked about this episode: I love that, as I suspected, I was hoping that they were going to change the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. title card for every time period that they jump to, and they did it this time. It's a nice giant big red block letters, and it's reminiscent of like 50s Martian films, and it has sort of a font reminiscent of the Men in Black titles. Not exact, but reminiscent, and I love those titles. I can't wait to see what they do with the titles going forward, and There's also a bit of a genre change as they're jumping through decades. The first two episodes where they're in 1930s New York, they're dealing with bootleggers, and it's again, I mean, the bootleggers versus police, that very prohibition storyline. It kind of reminded me of like movies such as like The Sting, where you have where it's that sort of storyline. Where in Hollywood, or Bonnie and Clyde, where it's like the criminals versus the police at that point. This one being the 50s, the Red Scare, the space race, the technology race, the security's top front of line, the spies are everywhere supposedly. It's very much in the vein of like a 50s spy drama, and they're kind of shifting the focus of the series and the genre of the type of episodes as we go forward. Based on the preview for next week's episode, it looks like it's going to be, it has the potential to be like sort of like a noir style episode with trying to investigate a potential murder and a detective story at that point. So I like the fact that they're changing genres going forward. Also, it's cool to see Agent Sousa back again. I thought he was a great character in the Agent Carter series that only lasted 2 seasons. I thought that that was canceled before its time. It should have had more seasons to develop, and it'll be interesting to see how they'll take his character in the next episode and how he plays out in Shield history. It was always I think it was the popular narrative, at least in my mind, and maybe I was wrong, but I always thought that the general direction that in Agent Carter's timeline, that because Captain America was frozen in the ice in the Arctic or whatever, that Sousa would eventually become Agent Carter's husband in this timeline, in the original timeline, before the events of Endgame, of course, happened. Also, I just got to point out that probably the best scene in this movie, in this episode, is Coulson saying "moist" over and over again, and I mean, it's a very small scene, but it was just hilarious in my opinion. I think probably the only weak point in this episode is. I think I said it last week, but also I'll say it again this week, that the Chronicoms, I mean, they're a species of robots essentially, so it makes a certain amount of sense that they're kind of one note in their shtick. I mean, they have a mission that they're carrying out, basically very computer-like, but I don't know, something about it. The Chronicoms are kind of one note in these episodes, and I'm not sure I necessarily want too much more out of them, but if I was gonna point out a weak spot in this episode, I would point to maybe the Chronicoms. At least in the first 2 episodes, we had a little more banter between the Chronicoms and with their internal processes, with the cops, with the Chronicoms impersonating New York cops, and they're debating like their procedures going forward. This episode, we had that brief scene in the very beginning with those same Chronicom cops, but these two in this episode, we have the secretary lady and one of the scientists, and they don't say a line, and they just kind of shove people around, and that's it. So, I mean, that's really all the episode needed it to have, but that's really, I mean, that's the only real weak point I saw in this episode. This is a fun episode overall. I liked what it set up. I can't wait to see where it goes going forward. As far as things that seem familiar, it has that feel of a 50s spy film. You've seen other spy films where they Simmons impersonating someone and then having someone recognize her. It's reminiscent. Spy films have done that before. Any storyline involving an infiltration where someone's impersonating someone, like Mission Impossible has done this before, where Tom Cruise puts on a mask of someone and they're trying to bluff their way past someone, but of course, invariably someone who knows them meets up with them, and they can only bluff their way so far before they're found out. That's the example. But overall, I kind of got swept up in this one. Actually, I didn't. That's, I think, is a mark of a good storyline where when the similarities aren't as obvious, or the similarities are obvious, you just don't care. That's the mark of a good storyline, I thought, and I think this one fit the bill. So those are my main thoughts on Agents of Shield, this latest episode. What did you think of this latest episode of Agents of Shield? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Are there any similarities that I missed? I mean, I didn't list a whole lot of similarities, but if there are any others that I missed, please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Be sure to tune in next week for my reaction to next week's episode of Agents of Shield, and fingers crossed, if the theaters open in time for July for the release of Tenet, that will be my first new movie release review in quite a while. So that's something to look forward to count down. Fingers crossed. Yeah, like I said, if you guys are the best. And if you liked anything you saw on my channel, be it this video or any other video on my channel, please give me a like, a share, and especially a subscribe. I'd very much appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching. But just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.